Hello, I'm Glenn W. Hunter, and today I am joined with Shor Denny of Community Now, as always. But more importantly, we have Melony Weber, who is here from Touchstone Youth Resource Services, based out of Nashville, Tennessee. So, full disclosure, before we started, they introduced themselves, and the two of them launched into a discussion about SEL and children and developing in community. And the good news is, I believe I earned a 3-credit course at the college level, listening to them literally share the experiences they've had impacting communities from the youth up. So it is literally my honor to introduce Melony Weber right away to the 3 C's of SEL. We're still the 3 C's of SEL: collaboration, community, and communication. But we're going to get a different spin as we get two very different parts of the culture, two very different parts of the country, but very common cultural challenges and equal amounts of success. Mel,
yes.
Introduce yourself to our audience, please.
I am the co-founder and executive director of Touchstone Youth Resource Services here in Nashville. And we work also in the area of SEL and primarily on this side of the country with high school students. We found that high school is a time where, sadly, a lot of the resources have kind of given up. And we kind of picked up the ball from the schools, or we kind of basically came alongside of the schools to help in the area of social emotional development with 9th through 12th graders. We've actually added those 7th and 8th grade, so we have slid down the age range a bit, but part of a really good work that's based here in Nashville.
Okay. And Shor, how would you introduce yourself, not just to our 3 C's audience, but also the Nashville audience that will be developing as a result of this?
Well, I'd say hello. My name is Shor Denny, and I am the founder and the CEO of Community Now. And we are a mental wellness organization, and we work with all facets of mental wellness, coming from youth-based organizations doing student leadership programs at a school site. We work with one-on-one coaching for teachers, and we do cultural sensitivity and trauma-informed trainings for the community. So we believe in mental wellness no matter how it comes.
Outstanding. So when you start talking about mental wellness, most likely there's a sense of mental dysfunction that would precede that. And I thought this was an interesting place to start looking at that, because exactly when does that dysfunction launch? So my question is to you, how young is the proper age to start bringing social emotional learning training and bringing those skills to our youth? How young should they be? Mel,
well,
I'll give you the research first.
Yeah, okay. Research says that the first 5 years are the most formative years in a person's development. And so I found in working with mostly teenage on into young adulthood that many times some of the underlying issues that people are trying to resolve in their adolescence and young adulthood really stem back from very early childhood. And then, to say when I was 5, my parents got divorced, or when I was 5, my uncle molested me. I mean, anything that happens during those most formative years, I think, serves the greatest damage to a person's development. And so the sooner we can deal with it, the better. But I usually come into the picture usually in kind of adolescent years.
The Community Now program works with elementary. We focus on elementary and middle school, trying to follow our elementaryers through middle school. With that, we believe that during that time that we're working on industry versus inferiority, and we just try to build our youth towards industry.
Outstanding, outstanding. I think one of the challenges that this particular industry faces is violence. it manifests itself in many ways at many points in our young people's lives. When you think about the youth that you serve, what is the impact of early violence? How does that manifest itself in their development?
Mel, you want to start? Or?
Well, I mean, there's been so much medical research on this because it literally causes brain damage. And we're getting, by the time a young person is reaching adolescence, they are working from a deficit of assets to be able to handle life because of the damage done so young. And I think being able to get to it earlier, I love that there are programs that start in the elementary years and that can carry kids through because, matter of fact, there was a situation I walked into, and I love these concepts of community and communication and collaboration. And I walked into a situation in a school and it was pretty chaotic. And there's nothing that violates community like conflict. And we can't turn on the news today without conflict. Somebody's in somebody's face yelling, from two different perspectives and two different points of view. And I walk into this school lobby and all the students, it was during lunch, had spilled out into the lobby. And there was one young man that was particularly volatile and being very loud and using a lot of language. And so I thought, let me just try to engage this guy. And so I went up to him. I said, hey, what's going on? Talk to me. And first he was kind of put off. He goes, what are you, a cop? I went, no, I'm not a cop. And he goes, well, I mean a probation officer. I said, no. And I said, but obviously something's going on. Talk to me. Tell me what's going on. And there was a little suspicion, I could tell. But I thought if anything is going to kind of de-escalate the situation, it's not going to be me stepping in and trying to take control. And sadly, that's what a lot of adults try to do when you're dealing with a lot of volatility that leads to violence in adolescence. And so instead, I just stayed calm and stayed concerned and got him to, we introduced ourselves, got his name, got his story. Long story short, he was a kid who is so sadly not unlike a lot of stories I hear where dad's not in the picture, which leaves a trauma wound. Mom's on the street again, and Granny is trying to raise 8 or 9 grandchildren. And he was the oldest of the whole crew of grandchildren. And what he was anytime you're dealing with anger, there's always something that underlies it because anger is a secondary emotion. And so when we kind of lifted up the anger to see what was underneath, he was really sad and disappointed because he had promised his grandmother he was going to graduate from high school. And sadly, because he wasn't paying attention in his classes, he was not on track to do that. And it was getting towards the second part of the semester. And so he was really hurt about that. But we talked about it. I explained credit recovery. He did have some options that he didn't even know was there for him.
Right.
He didn't know how to ask for help. And the interesting thing is, as we connected, that concern, you going from conflict to concern, we made a connection. Now, I knew he was supposed to be in the cafeteria, and if I tried to, in my authority role as an adult, just told him, young man, get into the cafeteria, it would have gotten a lot more volatile and maybe violent. And so instead, I connected and I said, hey, I need to go in the cafeteria. Do you mind going with me? He goes, oh no, come on. And so he, with no hesitation, walked with me into the cafeteria. Now, this kid and I, Adam, we'll call him, we'd never met before, but we were in the same community. He was a student at the school. I was a community service provider, supposed to be in the school, but that conflict put us at odds until I had to use my tools kind of calm things down. So once we got into the cafeteria and he was calm, then he's calling his buddies over and all the star basketball players. He's introducing me to everybody. He invited me into his own personal community in a really calm and respectful way. No more yelling, no more profanities or anything. And so had a good time meeting his friends, and then the bell rang. And so I just looked at him and I said, okay, well, I need to go do what I need to do now. And he goes, wait. He said, okay, I know you're not a cop, and you're not a teacher, but are you kind of like somebody who can talk to when we're having a hard time? I went, yeah, that's exactly it. And he goes, where's your office? And I just said, look, here's my cell phone number. I'm never in an office. Here's my cell phone number if you need anything. And I just thought at that point, there's even a collaboration, because I have a little street cred with this, basketball player with all the, I realized he had a personal connection to a lot of influential students on that campus. The kind of, the leaders on the campus. And so being able to, understand the sense of community, deal with conflict without trying to, exert control over them, giving them some agency in this whole process, allowed us to collaborate. I could call on Adam anytime I needed, some help with anybody. I'm like, hey, buddy, who do you know? We had a deal going after that. That is, I could verbally de-escalate that without having to overpower him or control him or punish him. And it made such a positive change in that whole situation.
That's so trauma informed. That whole thing was trauma informed right there. I mean, you went from, you went completely to his side so that he could see everything. That was just beautiful, the whole interaction there. Man. And that's the kind of stuff that we try to teach schools. We work with teachers and stuff to get them to de-escalate, right, in a classroom. So another trick that we do is we have the teachers prepare, because coping is preparation, prevention is preparation. So we have them go through scenarios of what would you do if a youth is standing in the middle of your floor screaming, right? So that they go through these scenarios before they happen, because being prepared, of course, means that your stress level doesn't go up, your mental health you're prepared, and you have these coping skills or tools already in place. We do the same with the youth in elementary. We start with, what would you do if you want to be the one in the middle of the floor screaming, right? So that they start thinking about, what do I do before I get there? Right? Because I'm getting there, I'm getting there. So what do I do? And we give them, their little tasks of, the breathing and that, different things that they can do themselves, because we believe that everyone can maintain our mental health. We all can. We don't need a therapist. Let me backtrack and say therapy is a valid thing. And yes, everybody, that is at that point needs therapy, but it's not where we start. Where we start is by building tools. Where we start is by teaching our youth that they are going to feel bad sometimes, but there are ways for them to recover themselves, instead of having to go to someone for validation or for, that safety that they need, that they can build the safety themselves.
Yeah. And that's, I think, in adolescence, just the insinuation that there's something wrong with them, they have a mental problem rather than a heart problem, an emotional problem. But that alone would cause them just to not want to hear from you,
Yes.
And so being able to, like you said, there is a place with certain mental illnesses that have to be treated in the same way. We need police in our society, but sometimes the police end up trying to do the job that a mental health professional would be much better at in terms of de-escalation. And I think teachers are, everybody in our community, parents, I've seen parents blow up in front of me on their kid when it didn't have to go that way, and it doesn't get the results that they want. And so being able to deal with a lot of these issues in a relationship rather than handing out business cards all the time is so much more powerful.
Definitely.
I had one time a teacher walked a student down the hall practically, by the ear, dragging them, and she's just like, Miss Weber, you're going to have to do something with this young lady. And she goes on to tell me that girl's being disruptive and distracting other people, and she's not going to learn. And while the teacher's doing this, and the teacher needed to calm down and wasn't de-escalated. But anyway, of course, the girls over there just going, saying, whatever, don't hear it, whatever. And so I just looked at the girl. I said, yes, ma'am, I'll be glad to take her with me. So we walk in the other room. I'm like, what was that all about?
Okay.
She said, because here's something I use a lot. I tell everybody I train, you can use this because I don't have a trademark on it. But when I don't care what the kid's doing, even if I've seen them do it 1,000 times, I will always look at them and say, what was that? That was so not like you. And you just watch them soften. And you can't reshape until they're softening. It's just like clay. It's hard. It is what it is. But while that clay's soft, and so as soon as I said, well, what's that all about? She goes, well, she just wants to be all up in my business all the time. And I'm dealing with teenagers, so I got it. Right. And so I looked at her and I said, I'm always up in your business. And she said, I know, but you love me. That lady don't even like me. And I just thought, why don't adults get it? And some teachers, sadly, and I love that you get a lot of, this, you got to have the buy-in. And if you get that buy-in, so I'm thrilled to hear you guys being able to train teachers, because in some situations, the teachers, they're dealing with their own trauma, because sadly, students are saying a lot of rude, awful things to them. And so the hurt hardens. Hurt always hardens. Yeah. And so being able to take that girl in there and it gave the teacher a break too. But I always want to go back to the teachers and try to explain it didn't have to go that far, had they had those skills in the classroom.
I think that's where trauma-informed practices come into place for people to understand trauma. As you said, people that deal with trauma, our perceptions are different. We react differently and our brains are wired differently. So I hear teachers all the time saying, why don't they act the way I think, they think they're going to act this way, but they are off doing some, and it's because we are not wired the same way. And you need to understand the trauma to be able to understand, that kid is going to do this. If I do this, they're going to do this, because they're not going to react, the way someone with if the count of aces with 0 aces or 1 ace, someone that hasn't had little trauma in their life is going to react completely different than someone that's had a lot of trauma in their life. So it's getting the teachers to understand that they can't treat all students the same. They're not all the same. And breaking down that unconscious bias, right, of race, yes, that we see all through our schools. Our teachers are unconsciously discriminating against youth for multiple things, not just color. It could be, their smartness, it can be whatever groups they're in. It could be their sexual orientation. It could be so many things that, as you said, our teachers are traumatized. They have their own issues. Right. So again, it comes back to how do we see each other as human?
Ladies, I want to switch gears just a bit as we're just going 100 miles an hour and I'm enjoying the show.